expensive lesson, admittedly, but a really good one to learn.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like, I think, everyone makes mistakes. I'm sure you've made,
plenty.
We've had many conversations and, we've both shared our mistakes and stuff. And it's just, you learn so much from that. So I don't regret it. I just know that if I went back in time or started that business again now,
it'd be very different.
I know how I'd do things very differently now.
From Ministry of Work, welcome to Greater Manchester's Greatest Minds podcast, a show about Greater Manchester's pioneers, entrepreneurs and visionaries, and the stories that brought their ideas to life. I'm Eddie Whittingham, and on today's show, how Dan Sandler's journey as an entrepreneur saw him clutch success from the jaws of defeat, as he sold a business which, for all intents and purposes, had already died, eventually selling it to another Manchester-based business despite interest from international conglomerates. Roll back to before 2020, when you're out drinking with friends in a pub and it's your round. You walk up to the bustling bar, slowly nudging your way forward, leaning over one another whilst trying to catch the bartender's eye, all whilst hoping someone would politely say, "He was before me," only for someone else to be served first. That was it. That's the way it had always been. Something that feels so ordinary now, expected even. The idea of ordering food or drinks from an app was alien back then. Back in 2016, Dan had that very idea, way before it became the norm, and trialled it right here in Manchester, in a pub in Didsbury in fact, to see if this idea had legs. And it worked, but much like most businesses, timing is everything. And at the time, Dan and his co-founder were building it. Although the customers loved it, the industry just weren't receptive to it. Or at least not yet. It took a worldwide pandemic to change that.
I started off in Cheadle, South Manchester. I was kind of a naughty kid, had ADHD growing up, so school wasn't really for me. It's quite interesting having that kind of dynamic going through school, not really wanting to be there, not really feeling like you fit in, and then eventually went to university in Leeds, and that really for me felt like the world was my oyster at that point, kind of a bird being let out of a cage. And it was still a bit of an unknown, like what do I want to do in life? And, I went through uni. I guess a lot of people do that, where they just kind of come out the other side and think, right, now I need to find a job. What do I do? So started looking around. I did maths with finance at uni, and I finished and graduated in 2009, so peak financial crisis. 0 jobs around in the financial world.
Good timing.
I know, right? Talk about timing, hey? And so I decided to convert to law, and that's where you and I first met, going through BPP. And I guess both of us really, at that point, kind of realised, is law really for us? And then it kind of started from there, really.
So had you come to the idea of law quite late, presumably, because what were you planning to do with the original degree?
To be honest, I didn't really know. Like, genuinely, in my mindset, from a very early age, I've always wanted to start a business. Never known what that was. For some reason in my head.
And where's that come from?
I don't know. I think I'm just quite a rebellious person and creative kind of thinking. I like problem solving and stuff. So I think for me, the first business idea that I came up with, obviously I didn't act on it, but I was probably about 10 years old. I'm not trying to say that in an arrogant way. It was just something that I remember thinking about at the time, was I really liked songs and I never knew the lyrics to them. So I kind of came up with this idea of I could write down the lyrics for other people and then sell it for like 50p or whatever, pocket money type thing. But I realised the problem was, if I don't know the lyrics, how could I write the lyrics down? And but then kind of always like going through life, I'd always thought to myself, like, I just want to start a business. I don't know if I could work for somebody else. My parents are very much of that mindset as well. My dad's always owned a law firm, which is kind of the law. That's where that kind of came in. And my mum's, she's done different jobs, but she's run her own businesses as well. And so I guess it's natural in the family that was something that I would do, coupled with that kind of rebellious kind of side to me. So yeah, I think it was definitely interesting having that thought process growing up. But weirdly, the only business I could ever think of at the time, there was two businesses that really spring to mind. One was Tesco. For some reason, I was like, okay, if I start a business, Tesco sells everything, so I have to start a supermarket. Obviously didn't do anything about that.
No.
I don't know why, but that was the only business I could think of when I was actively trying to think of things. And then the other one, not that I'd ever do this, was a casino, because I was like, they just print money really, don't they? And I remember actually going to my dad and pitching him the idea of, they had a bingo. I don't know if you know East Didsbury, Parswood area. It's got, for anyone that doesn't know, it's got a cinema and bowling alley, and it also had is it Mecca bingo or something? And I was like, it'd be so good. Like, bingo's rubbish. No one likes bingo. Like, change that into a casino. And I pitched my dad the idea. I did all the research on the licenses and everything. I think I was 16 at the time, so I'm obviously not going to start.
He's going to have to be the head
license.
license.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and the license was like 30 grand a year or something. And I wasn't pitching him to. Anyway, Grosvenor bought that out and actually started a casino there. So I guess
you were right.
Yeah, I guess I was right. But
so what was your first venture into business?
The first business that I actually tried, it was going through law school. Actually, the first business I tried was at uni. I was thinking about tickets at times. I was going on nights out quite a lot, and ticket system didn't really exist. I want to say it was before smartphones, or kind of around the time smartphones and the App Store kind of were released. So that kind of, the apps didn't really exist at that point. So tickets were very, very manual. You'd have people going out and physically giving you a ticket and on, the pre-lash kind of thing, and then you'd go out and give you a ticket. So my friend and I from my course, we sat down and we tried to write down like a ticketing website, and we kind of started on it, but we didn't really get too far, and then we graduated, and then she went off and became very successful in what she does, and then I just kind of plodded along a little bit. But the first business that I tried properly in terms of raising funds and getting anywhere was a business called See My Path.
Okay.
Which the idea of See My Path was that people don't know what they want to do after uni.
Yep.
So again, synergy.
Exhibit A.
Yeah, Exhibit A, B, C, D. Everyone around me, no one knew what they wanted to do, and they just kind of fall into a job. I was like, what is the point in a job? I don't get that. I don't buy into that whole, you should just do a job for 40 years and then retire if you're not going to love it. Like, that's what, like 60, 70% of your time that you're thinking about it. You've got to be passionate about it. So See My Path was kind of, the idea behind it was getting creative people or people in really cool jobs to show their path. Kind of like what we're doing here. Like, you're asking me about my journey, but kind of in a website type form where you could see how they went from school to, I don't know, being a Formula One driver, or even not even necessarily that glamorous, but designing Formula One.
But it's just
cars.
knowing that those opportunities are there, isn't it? I know when I was growing up, I didn't understand the breadth of jobs that are there. I'm probably more on the creative side of things, and didn't really know, other than the classic jobs of being a postman, a policeman, a butcher. I didn't know there was all these other creative jobs, particularly in Manchester. Yeah,
well, yeah, exactly. It's like Manchester's full of jobs, and you don't know what to do with them. Like, you just think, I've got a degree now, I'll just jump into a job, or you go into an apprenticeship and stuff. And like, I'm not saying all jobs are bad by any stretch of the imagination, but you want to be passionate about what you do. And so that was the ethos behind it. And I think the first few steps I took with that business were co-founders. Tried to find a co-founder, someone who was technical. This business, by the way, just funny, I made so many mistakes.
Oh, really? Well, you do on your first, right?
Yeah, of course. You do on your 12th. But especially on your first. Like, I raised a lot of money very soon, which I actually found really interesting to raise money. And I was kind of surprised at how quickly I raised it. I think people really bought into the idea. I think people could relate to that idea of no one knows what to do.
Super relatable, problem everyone has.
Yeah.
If you can fix it, that's a huge opportunity, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. And I just had no idea what I was doing with that business. Like, literally nothing. And
was that a case of literally them giving you a decent amount of cash and then you going, right, now what?
Basically, yeah. So I thought I had a plan, and I did write a business plan.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is the biggest waste of time ever. Like, who writes
Agreed.
it? Unless you're like a corporation,
Yeah.
you know. But anyone who's starting out a bit, like, write some bullet points. Sure, like this is a general angle, but just crack, crack on and innovate as you go. But know your financials and, you know, understand where you can make money. But aside from that, like, just you've got to be dynamic.
Test and learn, innit?
Yeah, so I think I raised, give or take, £250,000, which your first business straight out of uni. I thought that was a sizable amount of money. And I basically paid salaries for myself and my 2 co-founders, because I had 2 co-founders, and then design agencies. So again, I just really had no idea what I was doing. I knew I needed a platform, so I had a developer. And to be honest, I wasted so much money on design agencies, and they definitely saw me coming and definitely ripped me off. And it's something that I've really learned from, like, that whole be lean with your money. Having that money was actually, I mean, now it's a blessing in disguise knowing that I made that mistake, but I would never raise money too soon for the sake of it.
Yeah,
you're just going to waste it.
100%.
You give away equity to waste money.
Yeah,
it's pointless.
Just pointless. Absolutely.
Yeah, like, you've got to get further along.
So how did that progress? Did you get revenue generating?
No.
Okay.
No. It really, it was 4 years. Raising money extended the runway to what was 3 or 4 years or something. And that was a bad thing, because I could have got to the same point of failure within several months. But I just didn't know, really. So I kind of just dragged the money out, and we got the platform built and stuff, but I just didn't really understand the importance of selling it into the right places and understanding who the right places were and trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
I spent probably most of my time trying to understand, or trying to build a platform, trying to build a product.
And that's a really common mistake, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where you can almost hide behind that, because the reality is, when you try and sell it, people will either buy it or they won't, but it's easy to hide behind. So it was an expensive lesson, admittedly, but a really good one to learn.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like, I think, you know, everyone makes mistakes. I'm sure you've made, I mean, we've had many conversations and, you know, we've both shared our mistakes and stuff. And it's just, you learn so much from that. So I don't regret it. I just know that if I went back in time or started that business again now, I would be very different. I know how I'd do things very differently now.
And so that wrapped up in 2015?
Yeah, so I think it was around then. Yeah, so actually, funny story. About how my next business kind of came to be, if that's something you want to hear about.
Yeah, please.
So the next business was Tab. So it was coming towards the end of See My Path, which we'd pivoted into a couple of different things. One was called See My Day, which, funnily enough, I think was essentially Snapchat stories or Instagram stories, like that kind of mentality, but within your workday. And it was kind of a calendar base. You could see, people could go on and see what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. You know, you could be a physio for footballers, or, you know, and you can see around.
So that naturally evolved from See My Path. I can see how that would, see behind the workworkplace.
Exactly. And that was really, that was interesting, but again, it wasn't really taking off. So I was getting kind of really fed up with it, and I knew I wanted to close the business down. And I think it was around Christmas 2015. I went for a drink with one of my friends in a pub in South Manchester, in Didsbury, where I live, called the George Charles. And there wasn't really anybody in the pub. There was only a couple of people, me and my friend. And then it was a pub where you have to go to the bar to order your drinks. It was my round, so I went to the bar, and I was standing there for ages because there was a drunk guy, and he was kind of being a bit of an idiot to the bartender. And he started like throwing some oranges or whatever, and he was being an idiot. But anyway, I was standing there for ages. My friend was sitting at the table, and we're both just twiddling our thumbs whilst I'm waiting to order my drink. And it was about 10 minutes later that I got the drinks, got back to the table, and I sat down. And I was like, why can't we just order this from our phones? Literally, why can't we order this from our phones? And I was like, that's a good idea. It's basically Deliveroo, but in a bar, in a restaurant, and stuff like that. So.
And can I add, this is before Wetherspoons have got it rolled out nationally. This is before COVID hits, and
this is 2015, yeah. So this is way in advance of anything COVID related. Anything.
And at the time, because I remember it well, going to the bar and buying a drink. that would have felt quite alien.
Oh, it was
Like,
so,
it's the norm now, isn't it?
It is, yeah, people do it all the time. You've got the QR codes everywhere, or you just download apps and you just go on to it. And it was just such a, at the time, it felt like a very novel idea. And I was like, I couldn't stop thinking about it over Christmas. I remember it. And then what happened was, like, prior to that, there was an event in Manchester, at Manchester Central. I can't remember what it was called, but it was a big tech event. Everyone had stalls. And Steve Wozniak was the keynote speaker. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Did you go to it?
Yeah, I think I did.
Yeah, it was cool. It was a really cool event, to be fair. Like one of the biggest names in Silicon Valley coming to Manchester and talking about his journey was just an incredible thing. But that day, I think that was in the January. So I'd had this thought about this kind of bar app thing in the December. I was thinking about it all Christmas. Then at the start of January, we had this event, and I'd talked to the boys, my co-founders, like the morning of the event or the day before, and I said, look, it's not going anywhere. We've had years of trying this, 3 years, 4 years, whatever it was. I think it's time we gave up. And they were like, yeah, okay, cool. So we'd made the decision that day. And in my head, I was like, I'm trying this bar idea. And
did they know that at this point?
No, but like, I don't think it was just something in my head. Yeah. Like that wasn't like I would have shut down See My Path anyway, because it just wasn't going anywhere. It was a waste of money. And yeah, I couldn't get it to work. And I was like, I need to, I've got to be in my bonnet now about this other idea, and I need to try it.
And it's awful that when you've got an idea, you can't shake it, can you?
No, you just can't. You literally have to try every single idea that comes into your head. So I was like, I need a different co-founder. There's nothing against my other co-founders. Love them. I was like, I just need a fresh start. I need a developer. And one of the other co-founders from See My Path was a developer, but I was like, I need to find a developer, have a fresh start, and just someone that I think could be the right fit for this business. So this is, again, made the decision either the day before or the day of this event. I go to the event. I've got a stall there, which is completely pointless by this point because I'm shutting the business down. And so I just left that stall, and I was on my own there. Neither of my co-founders came to the event. And I was just wondering, because I was like, it's cool to see Steve Wozniak and, just have a look around the
see what else is going on, right?
Yeah, there's loads of tech businesses in Manchester. I was really interested in everything just in general. And I was walking around the event, and I bumped into someone that I knew just from the kind of startup world. And he was with his friend. And my friend that I knew, Hader, he was like, I've just got to shoot off. I'll see you guys in a second. And then I was left with this guy called Joey, and we were just chatting. And I was like, I'm Dan, like, this is what I'm doing. I've got this idea in my head. And I was like, what do you do? And Joey was saying, I'm a developer, currently working for Sky. I think he was 21 years old at the time, maybe. Wow. Like young, just that kind of, you know what I mean? Just developer, just absolutely killing it from a ridiculously young age, self-taught. I was like, oh, that's really cool. I was like, I'm actually looking for a developer. And he was like, I'm looking for a business partner who's got a business and that I can develop. I was like, amazing. And then we connected on LinkedIn, pinged him a message, and literally like the next day we started working on Tab. I was like, it was quite cool to be able to, the speed of that. Because finding a co-founder can be difficult. Finding the right one.
Especially, a technical one.
Oh yeah, it can be difficult. It's a question I'm asked a lot. I don't know if you are.
Yeah, all the time.
I mean, just in a broader sense, do you get people approaching you, like asking for advice and stuff?
Like every day.
Yeah, like literally all the time. And I think for me, because I've been in the kind of tech app kind of world, I get asked app questions and money raising questions all the time. Like, I've got this idea for an app. How do I raise £1 million? I'm like, what do you need to raise £1 million for? No one's going to give you £1 million.
No, and particularly now, I think with the no code tools and everything else, or even just by automations, you can build a lot of things that you would have been building then, which you had to have someone to build from scratch. You can do a lot of that now by making a little bit of a Frankenstein, particularly for an MVP. Okay?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can cobble it together. And, the right technical co-founder is going to be more than happy in exchange for either equity or just their time to build something out, see if it can work. And then like technical co-founders or developers a lot of developers really want someone with the idea and the other expertise to come along and do the stuff they can't do. And so you can have that conversation quite easily with a developer. You've got to find the right one for sure, but there are a lot of developers out there, and you can go on LinkedIn, you can spend 20 quid doing a job advert, I guess, as it were, to find and then to spark those conversations. So that was great. We started working on that.
So that first iteration of the sort of app, what was it? What could you do with it?
So the first iteration was literally like a list of bars that we were working with. You go on, you click into the bar, and then you select your drinks and pay for them. So it was, I guess, as you would expect, it was a robust MVP, I guess, as it were.
What was because I remember at the time, because obviously I knew you, but I remember seeing it popping up in some bars.
Yeah.
What was the bar's attitude towards it? Like, were they receptive? Did they think this was a stupid idea? Like, I can imagine a bit of both.
It definitely both. But I would say, in reality, much more on the not receptive kind of side. Yeah,
which is wild now, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. Whereas now they have to have something of this nature in there. Like every bar you go into has some form of QR code on it.
Can you remember any meetings where it was like just hard no? Like
or like most of them really. Wow. There were some really receptive bars, and obviously we got it into places, but so that's where like kind of I had to get really creative with it. I mean, the starting point of Tab, I guess, before I get into the other side, was how I launched it. I actually went back to the George Charles, which is where I had the ideas, because it's for a couple of reasons. One, I had the idea there, and two, the guy said yes, which is and three, it's the closest bar to my house.
Yeah, that helps.
It definitely helps. It was like a 2-minute walk from my house. So the way I launched it was I went in, I pitched David, DV as he's known, the owner of the George Charles. I said, look, I've got the idea for this app. And it was the first person I spoke to in the industry. And he was like, it sounds great. You can basically take over the bar and do what you want with it. And I was like, amazing. I'll put a tablet behind your bar to receive the orders, train up your staff. And then can I just come in and talk to the customers as they walk in? He's like, literally do what you want. I was like, unreal, mate. That's so generous of you. I really appreciate that. And obviously in my head, I'm like, that was easy.
Yeah, this is going to grow.
I'm going to be a billionaire before you know it. Like, so you definitely have that mindset for sure. 100%. And I went in and so it was the most nervous I've ever been in my life for anything. That walk on the very first day when we'd put it in, walking from my house is maybe like 3 PM down to the bar. That 2 minutes felt like a lifetime, because my plan was to go in and just everyone who walked through the door, download my app, try it. And it's just so nerve-wracking because I was launching a business. I had no idea if it was going to work or not. And I spent 8 hours a day, 7 days a week for 2-3 months in that bar, like telling every single person, every single customer to download the app. And it was amazing, to be fair. Like the feedback I was getting, I mean, I probably should have branched out a bit quicker.
Sure.
Yeah.
But at the time, amazing sort of test bed, right?
Yeah, it was insane.
Instant feedback. Also for you, instant validation. You're seeing people using it, getting a drink delivered to the table.
Yeah.
That must be quite the feeling.
I think the things I saw with that were incredible. So I would say I remember one night, this happened a couple of times, there was groups of people coming in. I was like, download my app. And they're like, oh my God, you're the guy with the app. Like, we've come to this bar to try this app out. We've heard of it. And that happened several times. Like, you've actually made your way into this bar. They'd already had the app on their phone and they were using it. That was amazing. People were getting their friends or parents from other side of the world to buy a drink
drinks
for their table, which is cool, like
we
a birthday
see now all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the final, like just talking to people, hearing their stories was amazing. And I think, I don't know how many investment opportunities came out of that, but I'd say I was offered investment from maybe like 20, 25 people probably.
And so presumably at that point, you are thinking, we're off to the moon here.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to. You have to have that. Like, it's hard to not think of that. And I'm still really early days as a founder, and you don't really know what's going to happen. And Yeah, I mean, I would definitely be thinking different things now. I mean, even with my current business now, I'm a lot more conservative. But at that point,
yeah, because how old were you at that point as well? So still
2015. So yeah, late 20s, like
So,
27,
yeah.
28 maybe, something like that. Or 2016, I guess. And yeah, you just so early, so young, and you just again, like I raised money pretty quickly with that one, pretty easily, because everyone could see the potential. I think that like a good lesson from that particular kind of launch was just be there, like be the face of it,
Yeah,
and
100%.
the opportunities will just flow your way.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, a lot of people hide behind it sometimes, and you
yeah,
can, you've got to own it.
yeah, exactly. You got to own it, and it was really cool. And then it did actually expand and expand and expand. But we started meeting with more and more difficulties, like really hard to push back. So the
Like
opportunity,
what? Sorry.
just stubbornness, like
From the bars or from
yeah,
the right?
yeah.
Because were the
People,
customers more open to it than the bars, or
customers loved it.
right?
And do you know what? Like we even had the statistics that like the George Charles were making more money out of it because people were ordering more drinks because
Yeah.
you on a Friday and Saturday night.
You're not wasting your time sat at the bar or interrupting your conversations.
Yeah, exactly. Like so people were ordering 1 or 2 more drinks per night. Imagine that times the entire weekend. It's like thousands of pounds more in revenue.
Yeah.
And that's what's a bar there for, to make money from serving drinks and food and whatnot. So yeah, it worked really well, but yeah, other bars were just not anywhere near as receptive.
And so how did it go from a great launch? You've spent months there, like getting great feedback, probably feeling pretty excited.
Yeah.
How did it go from there?
So I think from there, I started venturing towards town, like the city centre of Manchester, and that's where I really started to run into the difficulties. So in Didsbury, the bars were really receptive, and it was going really well. But in town, it was less and less receptive. So I had to get a little bit creative, and I was thinking, like, what is the angle? How am I going to sell this in? I don't think I'm the best salesman at all. So I was thinking, what other ways are there of selling in? And the way that I thought of, which didn't necessarily work too well at the time, but has a good ending, I guess, was the drinks brands. Bacardi, Heineken, Carlsberg, like all Diageo, all these huge, huge companies that own the industry, literally tens of billions of dollars or pounds or whatever. And they have reps on the ground who are constantly going into every single bar, restaurant, club, whatever in, just in their area, trying to compete to get the contracts in that bar. And my thought process was, I can partner with them or try and partner with them.
Yeah, and get like a sales force almost.
Yeah, exactly. Like reseller kind of opportunity. Yeah. And the pitch was, there's an industry stat. It's not my stat, so I can say it and I can believe it as well, which is it's called winning the first drink of the night. And the statistic is 70% of the time people will continue to drink whatever they first ordered.
Oh, interesting.
So if you order, if you order a Stella as your first drink, you'll just say same again. Yeah. And I can buy into that. I think that makes sense. So the pitch was, you get us into this bar when you're trying to get this contract, and give them tab as well, and then we'll promote you on our app. We built like a promotional tool through the app, so they download the app or they go onto the app, and then it pops up and says, "Have this gin and tonic" or whatever, and they love that. And they still got pushback, to be fair. They just didn't want technology in the bars and restaurants. So yeah, that was really hard. And then ultimately what happened was we didn't have the financial model. Again, when you look at things like Deliveroo and stuff, they can charge a rider fee. They can charge more money because the order drinks. I mean, nightclubs were a really good industry to work with because the you're ordering a bottle of champagne for like £1,000 or whatever. There's a lot more to play around with.
So what was the basic model? Was it just a percentage per order?
Percentage per order, and we just couldn't convince the bars to get, because their margins are so tight. And but I don't know why, because they were open to Deliveroo. So I still, even to this day, think maybe there was something that either I was doing wrong, which I can't figure out, or their margins are too tight. There's something there that's not.
Timing's everything sometimes, though, isn't it? And I think when you look at what you were doing then, it was way ahead of the curve. Like way ahead. So what sounds, people might be listening to this going, that was obvious. Well, it wasn't back then. It wasn't. It was just just wasn't a thing.
It wasn't a thing, I guess. No, and so ultimately, I had to plant a pandemic. No.
Yeah, exactly. We found the car. But I suppose it did need that. I always say this about businesses when people ask for advice. I think if you've got a business where you've got to change like an attitude or a habit, it's a very difficult thing to do because there's an education piece before you can even sell to them.
Yeah.
So in your case, it had to be something as huge as a pandemic to cause that shift.
Yeah.
And I think if it hadn't have been, it probably would have still been anyone with that similar sort of idea would have struggled probably.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, actually, whilst I was in the business, people had approached me and said, like, I have tried something similar and this is the pushback I faced, etc. So I don't necessarily think I was the first person. I'm not going to credit myself as saying I pioneered this or like idea or I was the first. Like, I think people had the idea.
Yeah.
I think at the time I probably got further than anyone else or most people, and I don't really know why that was. Maybe a bit of luck or maybe a bit of the right strategy, but it still wasn't enough to pay the bills really. But what ultimately happened with it towards the end of 2019, I really couldn't grow it big enough at all, and there really wasn't enough money in it at all. Again, same sort of thing as See My Path, but
it was making some revenue.
It was making some revenue, but I mean, in terms of the money going through the platform, there was a lot. Not like millions or anything, but tens, hundreds of thousands of pounds. But none of that was our money. Sure. That's the bars collecting the money, and we're taking,
a few percent.
Yeah, pennies on the pound kind of thing. Yeah. So it was just not enough, and I obviously was trying to increase it, get a pound here, a pound there, rather than 2 pence here, and it just wasn't happening. So yeah, ultimately, end of 2019, we decided to shut the business down and just same sort of thing as See My Path. Like
it's hit the end of the road.
Yeah, it's hit the end of the road, and that was kind of that really, and that was end of 2019, and then the next 12 months was very interesting after that.
So obviously, end of 2019, presumably you were you devastated? Was it writing on the wall for a few months? Like, what were you feeling at that point?
Yeah, I was feeling. I was feeling burnt out. I'd been, 2019, 2012, I think I started See My Path maybe. So that's a good 7 years of just, the grind, the graft to get to nowhere.
And a lot of no's.
A lot of no's, a lot of rejection, and you just burn out. Yeah. I mean, it's hard work, isn't it? Yeah. You know what it's like, and it really tires you out. So I think it was towards Christmas time, and I was like, I'm going to shut this down. I'm going to have a break, and I'm just going to try and clear my head for a bit and just figure out my next steps. And so, tiredness and just really burnt out. Probably pretty deflated, to be honest. And then.
But that wasn't the end of Tab, was it?
That wasn't the end of Tab, but I guess slightly before we get to that, like what ended up happening in terms of the chronology was, I don't know what it is about Christmas, but that was kind of over the Christmas period. And then in January, my friend had just started a job as head of operations at Toro. Toro is Airbnb, but for cars, an American Silicon Valley born company, massive in America, and they were just trying to launch it in the UK. And at this point, obviously I haven't mentioned this yet, but I had properties at this point and I was doing Airbnb on them, and I'd really figured out how to kind of nail the Airbnb model and maximize that revenue. And when I heard about the car version of it, I was like, it's not in the UK. I could make it big, huge opportunity.
And presumably kind of partly in your mind was, if you kind of become the first into that, then Toro are going to buy you out, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Or just being like the biggest host in the country, kind of thing. Like, imagine being host number one on Airbnb in the UK. You can build up all your reputation and stuff. Not that it necessarily matters, but just getting your foot in early doors is really good. I didn't really know anything.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't a rival to Toro. It was just you
were going
to be a host on their platform.
Yeah. So I wasn't trying to build their platform. I was trying to just be a host.
Sure.
No marketing. They do all the marketing. I didn't have any of the headache with the insurance and stuff. We'll come to the insurance later.
I can already imagine.
So I didn't know that at the time, but just leverage Airbnb, but for cars. Yeah, simplest way of thinking about it. People make money on Airbnb for a reason, and I just thought I can get my foot in the door early here. So this was in the January. I just shut down Tab. I don't know why I jumped into a business so soon against literally everybody's advice.
Yeah.
But I just can't help it.
I did the same.
Yeah, you can't help it. You can't help it. Like if you think of an idea,
if you see an opportunity in front of you, it's hard to say no, isn't it?
I know, like people's mindset these days, kind of a bit off tangent, going on a bit of a tangent, is people had it so good, boomers had it so good, and they did, rife with opportunity. But the reality is there is so much opportunity that people have ideas every single day.
And it's never, we touched upon it earlier, it's never been easier to try and start something.
Yeah, it's never cheaper.
Exactly,
and more accessible. So it's not easy to grow. But I don't think it was easy back in the day either.
It's easy to get an MVP out there.
Yeah, exactly. Like, especially like web-based. If you're building hardware, maybe it's slightly different. But it's easy enough to do things. So, yeah, you come up with an idea and you just want to try it, don't you?
And you did.
I did. So. My mindset with it was, aside from just a potential opportunity, I was thinking, so I was living in London at the time, moved back to Manchester sort of during that time period when I'd shut Tab down. And this is in the start of 2020. I didn't have a car, so I thought I'll buy a car. If it doesn't rent out, then I need a car for myself anyway. So that was kind of a
relatively safe investment, really.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I need it anyway. So I bought a Ford Fiesta, I think it was.
Splashed out.
Yeah, I know. I went crazy. What was it, about £6,000-7,000? Bought it on hire purchase. And that was in like mid-January 2020. And by the end of the month, it had broken even.
Wow.
That's
insane.
Yeah, on the insurance. Yeah. I didn't pay off $7,000. I did on the monthly.
On your monthly thing, if you could break even every month and you still got access to that car.
Yeah.
But for yourself.
And that was only half a month because it was mid-January by that point, and it had already paid off the finance and the insurance by the end of the month. And January is like, well, at least using my Airbnb knowledge, it's the slowest month of the year. So I was like, that's pretty impressive. So I started to buy more and more cars.
On purchase?
Yeah. At the start, I bought some outright. You're only talking cheap cars, just like Fiat 500s and Ford Fiestas, Peugeot 208.
Small.
Yeah, like 6-7 year olds. Yeah. And it was doing really well. And then March 2020, there's a little event that happened there. I can't really remember too much about it.
Which probably hampered one, but created an opportunity for another.
To be honest, it actually genuinely created an opportunity for both.
Right.
The pandemic. It was kind of a weird one. But I'll flip back to Tab because that's where my phone.
By all accounts, at this point in time, obviously COVID is kicking off.
Yeah.
You're busy now with the new car business.
Yeah.
And Tab is all but dead, right?
Tab's dead. So
like you've forgotten about it.
I've forgotten about Tab. So when we shut it down, the code was on GitHub.
Yeah.
Or GitHub, if I'm going to pronounce all of the letters.
Which is an online repository for code.
Exactly.
So it's a place to keep it safe, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And Joey and I had said, all right, let's keep it on GitHub to just in case we ever need it. But then after a couple of months, I was having to pay the GitHub fees every month and whatever other fees. And I think it was like £100-200 a month. And I was like,
enough to not want to spend.
Yeah. And I was just like, what's the point in spending it on this? So I said to Joey, just shut it down, just stop paying the things. And he agreed. And, that was that. The subscription or whatever it is for GitHub ran out and the code just kind of went off into the ether. I don't know when that was, January or February or something, or March 2020. Then the pandemic happens. And then my phone just starts exploding with all my friends and family saying, Tab, you need to do something with Tab. Like lockdown's happening. And I don't know how much people, I know you remember, like these kind of apps just started sprouting up left, right and center. Mm-hmm. And out of nowhere, so I'm getting all these texts from my friends and family. I then get a text from this CEO of a company, which I won't name, but I get a text from them saying, we're really interested in Tab to potentially acquire it. Are you interested? And I was like, this is the text that I was, kind of waiting for. Yes, kind of thing. Like
what an opportunity. Yeah. And also from something that's dead and buried, really.
It's dead and buried. And obviously, like when the first lockdown happened, Joey and I had spoken at that point, and I was like, I don't have the appetite for it.
Yeah.
There was so many rejections. Like,
Yeah,
and
to
there's
pick
a lot.
it up and go again is,
There's a lot.
especially when you've already mentally put it to bed.
Exactly, and there was a lot of pushback, I guess, from the industry. Which I just didn't want to have to go through that again, and I didn't want to have to go through the competition, and just wasn't interested.
Arguably, at that point in your head, you might well be thinking it's going to be even harder now.
Yeah, too much competition.
The aptitude's still going to be the same, but there's now 10 others doing it. And
because I had this car opportunity as well.
True.
And I didn't want to bite off more than I could chew. So it was a bit of a what do we do moment. And then I get a text saying, we'll take it off your hands, we'll buy it off you. So I get this text saying, we'll buy it off you. And there was a number in there, a large number for a dead company.
for a dormant company.
Yeah, for a company who we'd ended a few months ago. And obviously I phoned Joey. I'm like, Joey, where's this code? So Joey then looks on GitHub immediately, and he's like, it's in the bin, in the recycle bin in GitHub. And in GitHub, you've got 90 days before it's permanently deleted. So you can get it out of the bin within 90 days. After that, it's permanently deleted. He's like, and this whole element of my life was very much like a Mission Impossible movie where they've got to cut the wire on a bomb, and it's the countdown time is going on. So it's in the bin on GitHub, and it's 90 days before it's permanently deleted. We're on day 85, and Joey can't get the code. There's a problem somewhere on GitHub.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I know.
What, like just a technical problem?
Yeah, something was happening.
Shit.
So we raise a ticket with GitHub and say, we need access to this. We get an automated email. We're busy. We'll respond within 10 working days. No. And we're literally like, we do not have 10 working days here. And I said to me and Joey are running through all the options, rewriting the whole app, and he's like, there's tens of thousands of lines of code here. Yes. I can't do it. He didn't have the appetite to do it. And we're sitting there going, this is a really big number we're about to squander and lose because of this. Like, what the hell? And I'm kicking myself thinking, why? Like,
for the sake of £100 a month.
Yeah, exactly. Which could, like, 300 quid, I could have like kept this code. And so we're like, tweeting GitHub, we're going on every single channel, we need this, we need this, we need this. And I kid you not, with like 2 days to spare, we got the code back.
Unreal.
2 days. And it was that kind of like holy shit moment in your life where you just like that, like the stars.
It's the stars, it's that little bit of luck that I say. You've got to work hard, but you do sometimes need a bit of luck, right? Or you work hard to give yourself the opportunity to benefit from the luck, right?
Of course.
But he could have sent that text 2 days later.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's gone, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's no way back from that. I think it's permanently deleted on GitHub after that. So luck was
interesting. Where did the offer come from? Like, how did they just find out on the grapevine about Tab, or?
So, in that sense, like, I guess just a big part of doing what you and I do is networking. You have to put yourself out there. You have to kind of know people. And so for the previous, by that point, 8 years or so. Yeah,
you've been known for doing it, haven't you?
Yeah, well, you get yourself out there. You start meeting people and putting yourself in the right position. So that particular offer, it was from a Manchester-based tech company who, and I just met him over the years, and we got on really well. And
that's really interesting. It come from Manchester.
Yeah, it'd come from Manchester, and from the networking scene, and just bumping into each other and having a bit of a connection. And
so interesting. There's no, or presumably at that point, there was no negotiation on price. At that point, he just plucked a price out of thin air, and put it straight on the table, without saying to you, what's the turnover? Presumably, did he know it was dead at that point?
Oh, everyone knew it was dead, I would say. So, I'd say everyone knew it was dead, but the pandemic and the position of the world at the time, and we're out of the pandemic now in 2024, but at the time, we don't know what the future is going to hold. We didn't know how long lockdown was going to last, and even if we didn't know what the changes were to society globally that the pandemic would have, and it has had changes, like people work from home now, that mentality has completely shifted and will probably never go back to pre-pandemic. you don't know what the bar industry is going to be like. You don't know what the hospitality industry is going to be like. So
that's kind of what I'm interested by. Like, it's quite a big gamble for them to say, here's a decent number as well, because they could have lowballed you.
Yeah,
like,
well,
really.
I mean, it was a big number. It wasn't the biggest number, and it actually went up from there. To be completely honest,
but they could have lowballed it, really.
Yeah,
for something that was dead.
Yeah,
they could have been like, there you go.
I think they realised the competition. I was just in a very lucky spot, right place, right time, and I built the connections. Because what ultimately happened, going back to what I mentioned before, I'd built up connections with the drinks industry, and they're big players. They don't mess around. No. But they are risk averse, and obviously they don't know anything about technology. They know drinks, alcohol. They know how to have a good time, but they don't know anything about technology. And I think from speaking to the people, kind of account managers from those companies, kind of lower level, the CEOs, the managers, the C-suite of these larger companies were putting on their internal portals, we need ideas. How do we do this? Because drinks industry went kind of down. Well, there's two sides to the drinks industry. There's the hospitality, and then there's the I can't remember what they call it, but like when you go to Tesco, you buy it in your house and you bring it home and stuff. So that industry was killing it, but obviously the hospitality was completely dead. And the account managers and the managers that I'd spoken to over the years, because it had been years, they were saying, well, this app, tab, it kept coming up. And again, all of a sudden, my inbox is filling up with the CEOs, the CMOs, the CSOs, chief sales officers or whatever, of these conglomerates. Yeah. And I'm jumping on Zoom calls. So this is my pandemic. I was on Zoom calls with like the CEO of Bacardi, who own Grey Goose vodka and Bacardi and Bombay Sapphire or whatever, and then Brown Foreman, who owned Jack Daniels. I remember one of the calls was the CEO of whichever company it was. He's in his penthouse in Miami, and I could just see the sea and yachts and stuff in the background, and it was obviously a penthouse, but it was insane. And
you're in Didsbury, desperately trying to save the code.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm like, Jerry, get that code, and like all of these companies probably had about 5 or 6 different companies approach us, and they're saying, "What do you want?" They literally said to us, "What do you want?"
Wow.
And like, how, if we do a deal, what? And so they're putting it on us. They understood the competition, so it was in a bit
it's such a unique position and difficult for you as well, because how do you value an effectively dead business? Like,
yeah, and I guess in one of those senses, it's just it's how much someone's willing to pay.
You ultimately, I say with most, you both want to win.
Yeah,
like if you're happy and they're happy, then everyone is.
Yeah, exactly, and £100 is a win for a dead company.
Yeah.
And I mean, if anything else, it's just a very interesting way to spend your pandemic on these meetings. So beats just sitting in your room twiddling your thumbs when you can't go outside. So it was definitely interesting. How do you value a dead company? It's just what value it could potentially add to their business, and that kind of was where it came from. And there was a lot of different potential deals on the table. And one of the ones that we went with, and the deals kind of came in all different forms.
And did you do the deal with the Manchester company?
Yeah, that was the deal that we ended up doing. So yeah, it was a good deal in the end. Like I was out of that game. I was out of the mindset. Obviously not out of the mindset of selling the company, but I didn't want to work on it. Joey wanted to carry on working on it because he built the code. He loved it, and he was obviously ecstatic at the thought of being able to continue to build it. So Joey ended up like going with the company, and he carried on for a year or two. Yeah. Where are we now? 2024? Yeah, about a year or two, carrying on building that, and they integrated it with their existing product. So it doesn't exist as Tab anymore. It's integrated.
Part of something else.
Yeah, part of something else. So yeah, weird. And I'm just sat there trying to grow the car business at the same time. It was very, very interesting.
But a massive win.
Massive win.
But you're thinking, shit, I've still got a car company to grow and scale here.
Yeah.
Because that's got the early signs of decent life there.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was, again, right place, right time, actually, with the car business. So the pandemic was good for that too. One of the things was the bounce back loan. Mm-hmm. So because I'd started before the pandemic, obviously I couldn't predict the pandemic.
So that was the bounce back. Yeah, the bounce back loan was up to 50 grand, wasn't it? Sort of no ties really to help businesses grow.
Exactly. And so bounce back loan was a very easy way to be able to grow the business because and actually the pandemic in terms of usage, although everyone was locked up, we had doctors, nurses, those kind of people who still needed to travel, and they were using the cars. So in actual fact, the cars were still rented out. If anything, it was better because it was trusted people taking it for a long period of time, and because they didn't really want to get public transport. So those who got public transport started driving. That's where they came from. And so I was just able to steadily buy more and more cars with the bounce back loan. And yeah, I can't remember how many we built it up to in that period of time, but probably about 10 cars or so.
Yeah, it's a lot of cars.
Yeah. And so by the end of 2020, I had sold my business and then had a sizable fleet of vehicles sat outside my house. Not the glamorous vehicles, and
but still
Fiat 500 gets you from A to B.
Yeah, exactly. So that's all looking good at the end of 2020. Like, you're again thinking, I've had an exit here. This is on the way to another, or were you less bothered about that? What was the driver at that point? Because I find that an interesting bit of psychology. Like when you've had an exit, it does affect your sort of appetite and your hunger, and
massively.
And your needs and wants are obviously very different. So what was your sort of state of play there?
I guess at the end of 2020, so with the car business, I actually genuinely didn't think of it as a scalable business. I was thinking of it as passive income.
Yep.
My mindset was very much Airbnb mindset. And Airbnb, I mean, some people obviously grow it and they have hundreds or thousands of properties and they're doing millions of pounds a month. I wasn't necessarily thinking of it in those terms. My business partner at the time and we had just thought of it as passive income. Yeah. And I guess still at that point, I thought of it as passive income. And then after the exit, around the same sort of time, it was literally all at the same time, again, towards Christmas, because that's my thing. Yeah, exactly. So we're in, July now? Yeah. I've got a few months
People
before something big happens.
Beer,
yeah, exactly.
Around Christmas with Dan.
Yeah, exactly. So around, it was around the end of 2020, I was thinking, actually, there is potentially a big opportunity here. But I knew the challenges that were faced, and there were a couple of big challenges which I had to overcome if I wanted to grow the rental side of the business. And the two biggest challenges were insurance and financing. The insurance, because I had an Admiral multi-car policy, but they don't like you renting it out. So the insurance, the way that works on the car rental side is the platforms cover the individual. So if you rented a car off me via Toro, then Toro provide your comprehensive insurance. Yep. But to be road legal, I still have to have my own policy.
Sure, that makes sense.
And although if in event of a claim on the insurance, you had to put a claim in whilst you're on a rent, it would go through Toro's policy. Admiral and any other insurer do not like that.
No, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Because it's not quite what they intended it to be for.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and that did happen. And they were kind of all right about it. But then once you start getting to 10 cars, although they say you can have unlimited cars on your multi-car policy, they get very twitchy and they ask a lot of questions. And you try and bat them off and shrug it off like, no, it's fine. I've just got lots of friends and whatever. And, if you had 10, 15 supercars or whatever, Ferraris, McLarens, it probably wouldn't look that dodgy because I just think rich person, got lots of cars and a keen interest. But when you have a fleet of Fiat 500s and Ford Fiestas, it's a bit like, it's not a collectible car. It's not an exciting car. They do ask questions. So I needed a bespoke insurance policy. And it actually took me 2.5 years to negotiate that, but I did get that. And the financing side, we put it in, it was in our personal names to start with, and then we put it into a company. And then I wanted to get financing through that. And the obvious financing route for that, because financing, I mean, me and you could chat for, and we have done in the past, talked about financing for hours and hours and hours. There's so many different options. Yeah. And I mean, the headline ones are equity or debt, but within debt, there is a million different routes. Like a mortgage is just debt, but it's tied to a house. And this one was the obvious one with hire purchase financing, or PCP, because that is car financing. But they wouldn't lend to a business with less than 3 years of accounts. I came around, I was speaking to lots of different brokers, and I found one who was just super willing to graft on my behalf and have the right conversations. And I think that's just, again, a bit of a tangent in terms of financing, or in kind of most situations, a lot of it is just conversational.
Yeah.
It's about appeasing people's fears and, like easing them off to like help them understand your business. It's not necessarily too formal. It's just, look, this is what I'm doing. I'm completely open, cards on the table. I'll tell you everything you need to know. This is where the threats are and the dangers, sure, but this is where the opportunity lies. And then particularly with this financing, they could see the growth, and I think it tripled from one year to the next year in terms of growth, in terms of revenue. And they felt a lot more comfortable about that. And yeah, we ended up getting the financing that we need. And to be honest, when they said yes to financing, they basically gave us a blank check and said, you can have as much as you want. But it's tied to a vehicle. Yes, it's a depreciating asset, but you put a deposit down each time and it's making money.
Well, and that's presumably the key thing, right?
Yeah. And because I had a personal policy, and I had it wasn't just as simple as like asking for finances. The business was structured at that point.
Yeah.
And so they were comfortable with the way I'd structured the business. But at that point, it became pretty easy to raise the financing for. So
we've got insurance in place, we've got a fleet, we've got finance.
Yeah.
So what? Where did the creek start to show?
Where did the creek start to show? So, God, I hope this is an R-rated show. This.
Okay.
We started with lower end cars,
Yep.
and we moved towards higher end cars because someone went away to move to Dubai and said, I've got a Mercedes, it's still on lease for another year, I can't give it back, and I don't want it to sit there and make me no money. Could you take it? You can take 20% and basically manage it on my behalf. So I said yes, and I was like, perfect. Gives me an opportunity to try
test that market.
To test that market without having to splash out 30 grand on a Merc. And it killed it. It was absolutely smashing it. It was instantly the most popular car on the fleet. So I was like, I've got to be buying the higher end cars. So I switched the fleet up and I started buying the higher end cars. Unbeknown to me, it just attracts the wrong people. It completely attracts the wrong crowd. And yeah, like drug dealers, just galore, really. The criminals of the world, people wanting to joyride. People were renting them on behalf of other people that couldn't.
Different names.
Yeah, and they would rent them for 17-year-olds, 16-year-olds, like absolute morons. And, back in your policing days, when you were a policeman, you would have had a field day with me and the fleet. And, it was some cars that do 6,000 miles in 20 days. And there's only who's doing who's traveling
the country.
Yeah, literally back and forth to London, like continually. So there's only one reason someone does that. And
did you know that for sure, or was that just suspicions?
Well, I mean, you could see the mileage.
That's what it was being used for.
Yeah, I mean, yes, for many reasons. Like, it's not hard to piece it together. So how you start to piece it together, it's quite simple. Is the police bang on your door at 4 a.m?
That'll do it.
That gives you some indication as to what's happening. So yeah, I've been woken up at 3, 4 a.m. on a continual basis.
Because at the time they're registered to you still, effectively, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. They're all registered to my house as well. And this is a question for you as a police officer. Why do police officers think that 3 a.m. is a sociable hour?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. And I can only presume because something was time imminent at the point. Maybe.
No.
There's no excuse there.
Yeah, the car's in impound by that point, safely. It's just, I don't know. They just
In fairness, your name at the time, so they want to know, where are you?
Yeah.
Because they're in black and white, they're thinking, well, he's the guy who owns the vehicle.
Yeah.
He better be in bed, or where is he?
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, they never accused me. And I, being a former solicitor, and I don't feel comfortable. Sorry, I feel comfortable that I've done nothing wrong, and that I can talk to the police. And in my legal days, even though it's civil, I've still had handlings with the police. So it's not. They're still people at the end of the day, and I think it's actually a big lesson for me that words and the way you communicate with people is a very powerful tool to get yourself out of trouble or into places or build connections, in any kind of format. And yeah, I just spoke to the police in a very normal kind of manner, really.
Yeah, especially when you explain the business, they're going to go,
Yeah.
yeah, makes sense. I can see why it's been abused as well.
And it's so easy for me to prove because I've got like the rental
Yeah.
agreements. I go, here you go, and they must be so used to it. I mean, you probably were back in your policing days, and like that kind of just the first time the police banged on my door, it kind of just that was the start of a very continual trend. Sadly,
really like frequent.
Weekly.
Wow.
So I built the fleet up to 30, 40 vehicles, 50 vehicles, whatever it was. I don't even know, but it just happened all the time, and I got solace from the fact that anytime I went to the police impound, or every time I went to the police impound,
me again,
was they'd go in and you go, that's an enterprise car, that's a Hertz car. It wasn't just me that they were targeting. It was all the rental companies.
They're going to abuse
and there's only so much you can do to police it once they've taken the car.
And what was happening? So they're obviously taking the car to run drugs, but
or just joyride because they're nice cars like Mercs, BMs, Range Rovers,
and trashing them, or
understatement. Understatement. My God, that's so. Before I got to this point, or as I was shifting to cars, I moved from Toro to a different platform, a UK-based platform called CarShare, because Toro's fees, frankly, were extortionate. They're charging 42%. Airbnb for host charge 3%.
Whoa! So
you can see the disparity there. And obviously, a car is a depreciating asset. There wasn't enough money, and CarShare were new. And by this point, I was one of, or the largest host in the country, and certainly the most kind of structured host, because a lot of people were kind of who were doing it, and still am in contact with them in a big WhatsApp group. Just not as don't have that structure. So I was able to negotiate and build a relationship with CarShare, the CEO Andy, who's a really nice guy. I actually spoke to him yesterday. Got a much better deal, and I brought all my customers over. They were able to save money because, again, Toro's fees for the guests were extortionate, so it's cheaper for everyone. So just from CarShare's point of view, like the damage costs for them were just ridiculous, and we could track them all on CarShare. They unlocked it via an app, the car doors, so there was no key handover or anything. It was a lot more remote, which was perfect for me. But yeah, anytime there's a late return for a rental, you're looking on the tracking device, and you're like, where is it? And you're like, oh God, like, please don't. You zoom in on Google Maps, you're like, that's definitely an impound, and you're like, for God's sake. One of the this was sad. It was the nicest car in the fleet. It was a BMW 4 Series, but it had an M Performance kit on it. I'm not really into cars, and especially now I'm not into cars. This has really tainted it for me. But it was a lovely, lovely car. Definitely my favourite car in the fleet. And I was like, where is it? And Snakes Pass near Sheffield, very kind of countryside-esque, going through the hills and stuff. And I'm going to say it was about 20 metres off the road. And when the recovery people got there, I first spoke to them and I was like, how's the car? And they're like, it's lodged upside down between two trees. And I was like, oh. Great. It's like, is it a write-off? And they were like, of course it's a write-off, mate. Like, what an idiot. It's lodged upside down between two trees. How can it not be a write-off? So that was really sad. I had one car for literally 2 days, and I was on a plane, literally on the runway, about to take off, and I get a ring on my Ring doorbell from the police. And I open it up, and it's a policeman going, Mr. Sandler, are you there? And I'm like, yeah, I'm literally taking off. I've got to turn my phone off now. And I've shouted my number down the Ring doorbell and said, call me in 2 hours. That was in Newcastle. Went to that, blood all over the car.
Joking.
Yeah, damage everywhere. But there was a gold chain in the car, and the guy was in prison, and no one ever asked for it. So I eventually sold that.
Oh, right. Well,
$2,000.
Bloody hell. Proper gold.
Proper gold. It was actually proper gold. The guy actually did contact me after he got out of jail. No, but not about that. He was bothered about his jacket in the car.
Right.
Probably
don't even know. Well, let's say we don't listen to this.
No, well, like by the time I got to the car, no fuel, so and I had to drive back from Newcastle. It was grotty. I threw everything away at a petrol station, and there was some truckers next to me, in the pump next to me, and they're like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, I don't
It's been
ask.
a long day.
Yeah, and they were like, "You're throwing some really nice jackets away," and I was like, "Look," I just opened the boot, I stepped back, and said, "Take anything out from there that you want." So these truckers got, I think it was some Canada Goose jackets. So I think they were pretty happy. But I was like, "I'm not touching them."
No, don't wear them.
Yeah, well, yeah, in the impound.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and it just kind of, you'd find drugs in the car all the time. I remember there was one occasion where because we could lock the doors remotely and turn the engine off if we suspect anything, which we did all the time. And there was a guy who was a late rental, and he was clearly not a nice person. He kept phoning me going, "I can't get in the car," and we'd locked the doors by this point and ended his rental wherever it was. It was somewhere in Manchester. He was like, "I need access to the car. I need it. I need it. I need it."
Does, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, "I bet he does." And I was like, "I'll be there in an hour. Like, I'll let you
delay
out."
Tactics.
Yeah, but I was actually going, because I knew the script by that point. He had his drugs or whatever in the car, and I know he had his drugs in the car, and I'll tell you why in a second. But I actually thought in my head, he's going to smash a window here. He's actually going to smash a window. And I got to the car, he'd smashed the window, taken everything that he needed, except, like, I looked under the seats and everything, and he had missed some of his stash of drugs. So, yeah, it's not nice. But that was only part of the business. So, like, all businesses have headaches.
Of course they do, but not normally drugs and.
Well, it depends. I mean, Pablo Escobar would probably beg to differ, and Walter White. But this one got really complicated with the financing and the insurance and stuff. So one car
plus the headaches. So
plus the headaches.
Starts becoming a negative thing.
Yeah,
presumably.
exactly. There was literally one point where a car got impounded, and then the finance company found out, and they're like, "We're not happy with this. We're cancelling your finance on 10 cars. You've got 14 days to pay us back 250 grand.
What do you do with that?
I went to the toilet, changed my underwear. I spoke to various different people. Being a former solicitor, I've got legal solicitors who are friends, and I looked at everything from injunctions to just paying it off and whatever I do. Again, I tried to use the power of words, and I just spoke to them. I said, like, "What is the issue here? Like, what?" Because I actually genuinely didn't understand the issue.
Yeah, and they probably didn't fully understand the circumstance either, presumably.
Yeah, well, they said to me, "You've rented it to a 15-year-old or 17-year-old or something." I'm like,
No.
"I've not rented an Audi Q5 to a 17-year-old who doesn't have his license. Why do you think that?" Because that was a person driving who got arrested. But I said, "No, like, look, here's a rental agreement. We rented it to someone in their 40s or something, 28 years on their license, no points, nothing, completely clean license. And then he's obviously given the car to this moron, and then it's impounded." So I said, "Look, this is the checks that we do on the cars.
Doing all the usual
I can't
stuff.
sit in the car with them." And they're like, "Right, okay, we must have," and I calmed the situation down, and then they reinstated the finance, and they said, "If it happens again," and I was like, "Yeah."
And you're thinking it's gonna.
Yeah, it's going to.
So the business then, obviously, you've got a big fleet there.
Yeah.
But it's causing you headaches, finance problems, insurance.
Yeah, sleepless nights.
So, yeah, I can literally because you've woken up. So where does the business go? How does it progress? Where do you end up with it?
Stupidly, I'm still trying to grow the business at this point. Right. I even agreed investment. Not even investment. I agreed to sell like 20-25% of the company just to kind of de-risk, cash out a little bit. And I agreed all of that. But the writing, so this was last year, probably start of 2023. I'm still trying to grow the business. But in my mind, I'm like knackered from the early morning wake ups and all of the headaches that come with it. I don't want to be dealing with the police anymore.
Well.
So I, at that point, so this is again ties into the next business and where I'm currently at. And I should say the business is doing a lot of money at this point. It's turning over some hefty numbers for what it is.
Profitable as well.
Really profitable. The downside is the depreciation on the cars, where you don't necessarily understand how profitable you are or aren't. But it was turning over like some really decent money, which is if it wasn't, I wouldn't be able to sell part of the company. So it was doing some really good numbers. But it started becoming less and less favourable. And ultimately what happened was CarShare went into liquidation because it's not my place to say their numbers, but basically their insurance premiums and their
crazy,
excess.
yeah.
It was the excess for every claim went through the roof, and there was claim
and it has done across the board just for consumers, hasn't it?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I can only imagine.
Oh
the
no, this
scale
was
they're at.
the excess for them was they were basically like their insurance policy was essentially null and void at that point. They're basically paying for all of the insurance, and the amount of claims they had is you have to be raising billions to sustain that. So it wasn't really viable for them. But what had happened is when they went into liquidation a month or two prior, I was struggling to keep track of damage on the vehicles, understandably. And so I asked Joey, my co-founder from Tab, to just build me a personal app to track the damage on vehicles. So you can take photos, press mark damage, a little diagram of a car pops up and you can just tap on that. And then you can have a log of a
digital version of exactly what you get when you go rent a car, right?
Exactly, the piece of paper, but digitized. And it was just super useful for me. And at this point, I had some employees who would check on the cars and stuff. So they could then do that, and then I could just check on it all. And that was about a month prior to CarShare going into liquidation. CarShare then went into liquidation. And I was like, oh God, I need to sort this out. So I put the cars back on Toro, and the revenue it probably went down by 10 times, like literally in an instant. Because Toro's just fine, have raised whatever, $1 billion because it's an American Silicon Valley company. But it doesn't work for hosts. It just, their numbers, there's not enough money in the pot for everyone to make money. So that's why, so either CarShare went bust in that instance, or there's not enough money for hosts. Maybe in America, but certainly not in the UK. And at that point, I realized that I was starting to get traction on this app. Out of nowhere, I wasn't trying to. I just started realizing that people were using it. And I was like, I love tech so much more than cars and police and impounds and drug dealers and all of that jazz. So happily, it was a blessing in disguise, CarShare going into liquidation. I then put my car business into liquidation, which took quite a while to sell all the cars, but I then started focusing on the app. And that's then the next part of the current part of my journey, really.
Yeah, fascinating. The minute how you've come to where you even are now, and then, we don't yet know what the finale of that story is going to be. But tell us, Len, a little bit about, obviously you designed the app to help you in your own problem.
Yeah.
But how is that now transferring to other problems? How are you using it?
Yeah, so it was maybe the right place at the right time. I mean, you kind of touched on it before. Car rental companies, or a lot of companies, they have that. People have probably seen it if you've ever rented a car. They go around with a piece of paper and a pen with a diagram of a car on it, and they mark on it where damage is. I don't understand to this day how
old school. It's got the carbon copy underneath, hasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. How is that proof of damage on a car?
Yeah.
Like an X, like you can just go around with a pen afterwards and just mark it with an X. Like it just doesn't make any sense. So what we noticed was people were starting to download this and use it. This is a cool story, and so it's called Damage Control. And at the same time, one of my properties, I had tenants who had moved out. They had destroyed the place. It was a nightmare. And then I went through arbitration or mediation or dispute resolution, and I ultimately won it. Gathering the evidence was a nightmare. Yeah. And at this point, Damage Control was built. And I was thinking this same thing would be amazing for properties.
100%.
So I asked Joey to essentially clone the app, and he did, called Property Protect, for landlords to be able to, at the start of a tenancy, just take the pictures. And then everything's in one place. You don't have to store it on your phone. You don't have to send it on an email. You can get the tenants to sign it all and share it with them. So everyone has access to the same information. Really nice and simple. And even though Damage Control was, like, people were really interested in it, I was like, I'm going to focus on Property Protect. I think that's where the money is. So at the start of this year, 2024, I was speaking to estate agents and looking at Property Protect, and kind of forgot about Damage Control. And, there was a couple of users on Damage Control. But Property Protect, I was like, that's surely the one. Don't know why, but I just that was my hunch. Having been in both worlds, I thought it would be more useful for properties. And we spent about 6 weeks or so building out Property Protect. for estate agents. I had a big meeting that I managed to get with a huge estate agents, and they were really interested in it. And I went to that meeting, and they were like, "Nah, don't need it." And I was like, "Mint, great." And then we started looking at the competitors and stuff, and there's a lot of stuff out there for estate agents, and it kind of made me realise like estate agents aren't the right place.
It's already saturated, maybe.
Yeah, it's already saturated, and I thought landlords might be the one, but I didn't necessarily know how to get to them. And I was actually really deflated. So that was earlier this year. I was really deflated because I was thinking damage control, it wasn't, we were trying car rental companies and that wasn't really working. And I tried estate agents and that wasn't working. And then literally as I was just having a call with Joey, I was like, this is like, trying to be positive, but I was in my head, I was just thinking, this is a nightmare. And literally whilst I'm on that call, a live chat on the website for damage control pops up saying, "Where's all my vehicles?" And I was like, "What? What do you mean?" And Joey then just went on the servers and had a look, and he's like, "Oh God." I was like, "What?" And he's like, we've been focused on Property Protect for the last 6 to 8 weeks. We've got like hundreds of users on on damage control, and we didn't even know, and we'd had so many that they'd blown through the server capacity, and we hadn't increased. No, wow. So the servers had basically stopped. So we just needed to pay to upgrade servers, and we were like, "What?"
And where have they found it from then? Like,
literally, just
you weren't pushing it.
From obviously we've done a lot of user feedback and whatnot since then, like Google and the App Store, and we just didn't even realize. And when I say companies, I'm talking like Amazon and the NHS and car rental companies, actually, even and dealerships and mobile tire fitters and stuff. And within these users or these customers, these businesses, they've got like 50 employees, 100 vans, or whatever.
Oh, so anyone with a fleet, it's prime, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So it kind of, at first I was thinking car rentals and the customers themselves.
Actually, even like in the police, you'd had to do your checks in the morning. It was clipboard stuff. And
exactly.
All the blue lights were,
exactly. So we've kind of digitized that, and seems that I think there are possibly other apps out there, but like ours from user testing is, firstly, it's idiot proof, the cheapest and easiest to use product out there. And I just don't think they've even heard of any of the competitors.
And presumably it was whatever you'd set up originally, whether the website or the Apple Store, you managed to hit the search terms right, and that was getting you some.
Well, having looked at it now, I don't think any of the search terms were right.
Wow.
Because I hadn't put any thought into it, because it was just I just put it together, cobbled it together to get on the App Store for me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so I suppose it shows that people were searching for it.
Yeah,
and there's not a lot of competition in that.
Exactly.
Space,
so there's really
which is
an
amazing problem.
Oh, it's an amazing space to be in, where there's all these kind of people, and it's like, I'm not trying to say we're Instagram, like this big, but it's everywhere in the world are using it, and I mean like everywhere.
Amazing.
America, there's all over it. Australia, Sweden. And then it gets weird. China, Russia, Ukraine, some very they're using it in kind of all corners of the globe at the moment. It's amazing to see. South Africa,
And so, what's the plan? Presumably it's revenue making, and it's just a case of scaling, or what's the idea now? What's the next step?
So the plan really at the moment is there's actually lots of opportunities. So Tab had one kind of route. It was one app. It was pretty obvious what it was, and it was just bars, restaurants, that was a disparity. Like, do we go into a bar? Do we go into a restaurant, a nightclub, whatever? Yeah. This one, there's actually so many different variables as to how we could progress this, and I won't run through them all now. But I've got a head of partnerships, Amy, who's amazing, really experienced, and I could talk for hours about why, when I was doing the interview, I interviewed maybe 20 plus people, very senior people, but I picked Amy because of her knowledge and experience in the startup world as opposed to prior contacts. And she's fantastic. She gets startups but also gets sales and loves the hustle. So between Amy and I chat all the time, and same with Joey, we chat all the time. we've kind of narrowed down where we think the biggest opportunities are, and we're focused on 2 huge opportunities. The first one is growing where the existing users already are, for obvious reasons. If they're finding us, there's a need for it.
Yep.
And their fleets, haulage, anything like that. And it's a really simple self-serve product where they can just pick up the app and go, and then the monetization is just automated. After 30 days, pay a subscription and you crack on. So it's a SaaS product.
Yeah.
And then there's this really random opportunity that's just like come up out of nowhere, which is amazing and pretty well placed to hopefully capture this opportunity. Although it will take some time, and I'm aware of that. It's insurance companies. There's been a huge spike in shallow fakes. Deep fake is AI to manipulate photos and images.
Interesting.
And a shallow fake is really simple software like Photoshop or an app. And there's been like a 300% increase in insurance fraud, specifically motor insurance fraud, from people, I guess, because technology is really accessible, and also it's cost of living crisis. If people want,
it's a potentially easy win with the ability to edit things as it is now.
Yeah, exactly. And the way insurance companies gather their information at the outset of a claim is email us the photos. Not being fun. I don't have a graphic design degree, but I can edit stuff on Photoshop to make it look right, and especially with generative AI these days. And you just ping them an email with them, and they just have a disclaimer on their email saying, "Please don't edit these photos." I'm not even.
That'll stop it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like so.
And so, what does damage control? How does that help?
So our app allows people to. Well, it gives them the whole platform. They just gather their stuff on emails at the moment. Most of them, not all of them, but a lot of these insurance companies gather it on email. We provide that full platform. It's not just an app. It's got a portal as well. It's got a full dashboard. And they can have all of the cars in one place. We detect any form of manipulation through AI. We've got other safety measures, which I won't disclose at this point. But we've got lots of safety measures in place where any form of manipulation is detected. And I'm not saying it will be bulletproof, but it's like a speed camera.
And if it can reduce the claims.
Well, yeah. Like, so just a simple fact, last year alone, £1.1 billion in the UK was lost to insurance fraud. But the knock-on effect is that our premiums are higher.
Exactly. And that's the reality.
So it's not just trying to stop people committing insurance fraud.
No, it brings the cost down for everyone.
This is a mental statistic. In America, last year alone, this isn't just motor insurance, but all insurance fraud in America cost the insurance industry $308 billion.
Jeez.
In America.
Well, and that's the thing. The product could even work for home insurance, presumably.
Yeah, well, we've got Property Protect, same platform. So, yeah, absolutely.
Using the same tool, I mean, like the AI detection. And
so we've got, like, and what's amazing with it is we're obviously talking to insurers, and we are hearing back within the same day. Like, let's jump on a call. So,
well, it's a massive, these are the,
and this is like senior people.
Yeah, and these are the great business opportunities where it's a huge pain point.
Yeah.
And it's got a very, very urgent need to fix it.
Yeah.
And a monetary side to it as well.
Yeah.
And probably for them, a relatively low cost versus their gain, right?
Well, yeah. No,
so
for
that
them,
makes it a no-brainer.
Yeah, they can get rid of, I mean, not this is a good thing for some people, but they could potentially get rid of some admin staff who are having to literally sift through emails to
analyze fake photos.
Yeah,
as
exactly.
Well,
and sending out inspectors to go and view and assess the cars and stuff. It's big opportunity, but I'm not.
No, still early days, but
if we were having this conversation 10 years ago, I'd probably be like, I'm going to be a billionaire. Let's go and buy a yacht. But it's
you've got a bit of wool on your back, to stay grounded. However, doesn't stop that being an exciting opportunity.
It's exciting, but I just want to keep my head down with it,
Yeah. Keep working hard.
Yeah, I'm looking at it day by day rather than, trying to pick out my next car type thing. It's just, I've gone through the ringer with it all. I've had some successes. I've had a lot of failures. I've had a lot of other businesses in between the stuff that I've mentioned, and things don't go right. But I'm just trying to use all the knowledge, and I still feel really out of my depth, but in an exciting way.
That's where the real fun happens, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, like, making it up as you go along every day, but really trying to have your eyes on the prize. And yeah, it's exciting. Hopefully we have this conversation in a couple of years, and it'll be it worked. The plan worked.
It'd be nice to be one of Manchester's next big tech startup successes.
Exactly. Well, yeah, I mean, Manchester's a perfect hub for all of this because there's just so much going on, so many contacts to tap into all around here. You don't need to go to London, Birmingham, Nottingham. Boo. Stick with Manchester.
That's Dan Sandler, exited founder and now founder of Damage Control. What a great example of capitalizing on the opportunities right here in Manchester. That ability to pivot is something that can really make the difference between failure and success. And I hope to see Dan's latest venture become yet another success story for Greater Manchester. Thanks so much for listening to the show this week, and please make sure to click the follow button on your podcast app so you never miss an episode of the show. Don't forget to check out Ministry of Work, where you can sign up for a free trial day. This episode was produced, recorded, and edited right here at Ministry of Work, with a special thanks to our studio manager, Dan Brown, and of course to you for listening. I'm Eddie Whittingham, and this has been Greater Manchester's Greatest Minds.